And now President Donald Trump said the White House envoy Steve Witkoff is expected to travel to Russia ahead of the sanctions the U.S. plans to impose on Moscow over the war in Ukraine. Trump's deadline to Russian President Vladimir Putin will expire in days. If Putin doesn't agree to a ceasefire with Ukraine by then, the U.S. will impose new sanctions on Russia for the first time since Trump assumed office. Recall that President Trump had ordered 2 nuclear submarines to be positioned in the appropriate regions in response to highly provocative comments by former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev. Russian President Vladimir Putin later voiced hopes for further peace talks with Ukraine, but stressed his troops were advancing on the entire front line despite the threat of looming U.S. sanctions if a ceasefire war was not agreed upon. I have joining me to discuss the top stories from America today, Rotimi Kade. He is an Arise analyst. He joins me from New York. Good to have you from NY. Now, what can you tell us about the investigation of Jack Smith?
Well, according to the White House sources, the investigation is underway of Jack Smith for 2 reasons. One, because of his involvement in the election. Some critics actually say that he tried to influence the elections in favor of the Democrats, and that's why he was, being put in that position to investigate President Donald Trump and indict him and make him have a sort of a low ratings that will result to him losing the elections. Is also, in a way, that the second part is that, well, it's being complicit, not being fair, even in this investigation, and going into, what the White House is instituting to make sure that he gets, a fair hearing, so to speak. However, Jack Smith has always, denied any allegations concerning whether he's been unfair to the administration. Don't forget that he was very active. It got to a point where he almost laid some sort of indictment. His office can't actually indict, lay criminal charges against President Trump or candidate Trump at the time, but left it for the Department of Justice led by Merrick Garland at the time. And when Trump won in this year, last year, November, he decided to tender his resignation because according to the Justice Department, you cannot begin investigation or indict a sitting president. So far, we're seeing another chapter of Jack Smith's life. We don't know how far this is going to go, but we know that the Office of the Special Counsel cannot lay criminal lay criminal charges, I should say, against him. What they can do, they can prefer disciplinary action and refer his case to the Department of Justice led by Penn Bodley.
Now, his resignation seems to have raised suspicion, about the 2024 election, as he has been pointed out as playing a significant role in the interference of that election. But I'd like to also put this forward to you, Rotimi. Some people, usually when you take, you're in office and then you resign and leave, some people refer to it as him being witch hunted by the sitting administration. What do you make of that?
Well, I think the investigation would have continued, and perhaps maybe it will lead to something more fruitful than what we had now if Trump had not won the 2024 elections. But from the winning of that election actually changed the course of the mandate of Jack Smith, which is to see to the end of that investigation. However, we did not see that happen. What we saw was that as it's been a standing rule in the Justice Department, you can investigate, but you cannot indict a sitting president. That investigation can still continue after Trump leaves office in 2028. But as a sitting president, what's the use of continuing with that investigation with a sitting president when the sitting president already has the powers to actually disband that particular, special counsel? So Jack Smith was a bit more proactive and said before Trump actually disband this special counsel, it's going to be in the best interest to actually resign and leave it for now.
Now, let's move quickly to another top story. President Trump's special envoy, Witkoff, is to meet with Putin. That is, if that is not happening, as part of a deadline on, August 8th for Putin to end the war in Ukraine. So, should we expect any positive, feedback, especially after Trump's statement of moving submarines, to, strategic places?
Well, it's been confirmed by the White House that Steve Witkoff will be in Russia sometimes today, or perhaps later tomorrow due to time difference. But the purpose of it, which is his first visit in 3 months, is to further see how Ukraine and Russia can achieve the ceasefire that's being talked about. And there's so many things on the table. For Russia, Russia still insists that, yes, we want to talk, but we're not going to talk from the angle of weakness. We want to make sure that we are in a pole position to negotiate and have some of our wish lists come to pass. One of it is the fact that they do not want any U.S. presence in Ukraine. They do not also want what I would call like U.S. supporting fighting a proxy war against Russia. They also do not want, Ukraine to join the EU. If you recall that one of the reasons that led to this war was because President Zelensky was proposing, joining the European Union, NATO, I should say, in a way that will make Russia, more or less box in the corner, and Russia don't want that. Russia sees that as an aggression. Some progress has been made in the talks for the past 6 months since President Trump assumed office, like, for instance, returning the remains of Russian soldiers in the war so far. They've also see to the temporary ceasefire, which led to Russia pausing its bombardment of Kiev and other, territories. But after that, we've seen Russia advancing even much more than that. So the downside to this is basically that if Russia do not, comply to some of the ceasefire, Trump already has shortened the time given to Russia and Ukraine, which is 50 days to find a possible ceasefire. But of course, he has shortened it to 10 days. So we're running out, let's say, for instance, in the last 8 days of that 10 days to see how that negotiations can actually reach to a logical conclusion. And that's why Witkoff is visiting Russia in time ahead of that deadline.
We don't often talk about the U.S. moving submarines, but did Medvedev's post warrant that move by Trump? I'm asking this question because now you've sent, some envoy to discuss with Putin, but then there was a previous comment about, moving submarines to Russia. Plus, do you believe that the show of force will lower the tensions between the U.S. and Russia?
Well, absolutely not. Russia is the biggest nuclear power in the world. They have more than the United States, so they're not afraid to use it. However, sending subs to the territories of Russia also can trigger what has happened before, the Cuban missile crisis. If you remember in 1962, when Russia had to, match the U.S. energy to establish a nuclear facility in Cuba when U.S. actually did that in Italy and, of course, in Turkey, very close to the no-go area for Russia. So hopefully we're not going to see a repeat of history in that regard, where Russia had to be forced to do something they did in 1962. However, Russia is in a better position right now to perhaps maybe retaliate if U.S. in any way wants to do the unknown. But however, the good news about this is the fact that Kremlin has not said anything. The Kremlin has not given a statement regarding the subs that were sent in some unknown territories within Russia. And that's a good news, because if we hear anything from the Kremlin, or perhaps maybe Vladimir Putin, that could further escalate what is already a very fragile situation.
Now, you see, the reason why I asked that question is because, I mean, you move, subs to strategic places, and then you're sending envoy. But then let's move to Putin saying he isn't swayed by Western sanctions. And Trump has followed up with a possible tariff hike plan on China and India, who buy oil from Russia. Can this bring Putin to the negotiation table?
Well, I'm afraid not, because I think Russia has been trying to deviate from U.S. Strongholds on Russia's economy. And we've seen that, pretty much in the past few weeks and months. They've been tilting towards China and India, just as you said. They've been reaching out to them to buy their oil so that they can have more liquidity for whatever for the economy, and also to prosecute the war in Ukraine. At this point in time, U.S. threatening, partners of Russia like China and India with 100% tariffs to what is currently on ground, with a benchmark that U.S. has placed on India and China. That will definitely trigger something with China and India. Now, they will now join forces with Russia against the United States. I don't think that would be a smart decision, but I think that's the position of this administration right now, to see how they can force the needs of Russia to the negotiating table. But looking at the man of Vladimir Putin is most likely is going to be on the top about this. But the good news also, again, is the fact that he's willing to sit down, willing to welcome a U.S. envoy to Kremlin to have a talk. That is a good news. The moment he starts saying that I'm not ready to sit down or, have a talk with anybody, especially the United States, then we should be worried.
Now, we look forward to what Witkoff has to bring on the table right after the discussions with Putin from Kremlin. Thank you so much, Rotimi, for joining us from New York. He is Arise analyst.